Welcome back, everybody. You got Will and I Man here from the Block Runner, MetaZone, Rovi, mScribe, and today we're going to talk about Boss. This is a video we've been working on, we've been thinking about for a couple of weeks now.
Yeah.
And I guess the team over there, Merlin, and a couple of community members have finally released not only the light paper, but a lot more information around Boss.
And some teasers too, right? I don't know if we have that GIF pulled up of like I think yesterday or the day before, they dropped basically like a demonstration of what maybe like the most miniature of versions of what this this new protocol enabler is, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to exactly decipher at the surface level exactly what it is being visually portrayed during this little GIF, but I think you're looking for it now, right?
Yeah, I'm looking for it. Here it is.
There it is. All right, so let's take a look at this first, and then we'll contextualize what this possibly could be afterwards, right? Because once we get into the weeds of what Boss is and stuff, it's a big one. It's a big idea. It's a big chase, right?
Yeah.
Probably one of the biggest ones we've seen in a long time, and
It can be, yes.
We'll explain why.
All right, so what we're looking at here is someone using the command line interface, and it's running the, what's it called, BOB?
Mm-hmm.
And
the Boss baby, dude.
Yeah, so it's a command line interface and has like a cool kind of animation, graphic stuff, and ultimately it's a way to have some smart inscriptions running on top of Bitcoin.
Okay. So I guess this is the visualization of that. So obviously, if you're not a developer, you're completely like befuddled. You're like, WTF, mate? How is this relevant to me?
Yes.
Right. But if you are a developer, you're looking at this as like, this is something I could potentially leverage now. Why? Because I think the big overall umbrella concern here, and it's been proposed. So we've been following the OSHI team since the beginning, since we discovered BRC20s.
Yeah, it's like early.
Basically, like
February, March.
Sometime around March, April, something like that.
Yeah,
because BRC20s I think came around March. But yeah, like in the beginning when we're identifying all these different tokens that are being created, which of these have some kind of fundamental utility?
Yep.
And the real honest answer to that is none of them yet.
Almost not. Well, yeah, none of them.
None of them.
You're right.
Yeah, none of them do, for a variety of reasons, right? There's a lack of capital in this space, so actually executing and delivering like a final product is difficult without capital, right? So there's no real like fundraising, even if it's communal or like VC backing. There's no real mechanism for these founders to like tap into to kind of like, accelerate their development. So hence, a lacking of utility to a lot of these tokens. But some of them are addressing very fundamental like technical needs in order to progress the overall space forward, right? To where we can start to develop much more like funding mechanisms, liquidity pool mechanisms, basically
decentralized applications,
DAO governance.
Yeah.
All these things we've already seen basically emerge on Ethereum as a result of smart contracts.
Correct.
Right. So I think that's a good little segue into like BOSS, right? So it's an operation standard.
Yeah.
Right?
So BOSS stands for Bitcoin Operational Standard System. So it's a framework that using Bitcoin and BRC20 tokens to create a decentralized applications using smart protocols. So we've been reading this light paper kind of like multiple times. Mm-hmm. We've read this tweet thread multiple times.
And others.
It's
been a lot of them, yeah.
Yeah, and for the most part, what people are doing, they're paraphrasing everything that's happening in this light paper, and they're tweeting about it, which is cool.
Yeah.
But there's not a whole lot of comprehension and information distillation happening.
I mean, like to a much more like readable.
Yeah, something that's like
format.
very basic to understand, right?
But yeah, maybe, and I kind of like countered you with like, maybe this is just an example of one of these initiatives that just cannot be filtered down to that level of simplicity.
A chance. Yeah, there's a chance. Like if it was like a 2014 and we were reading the Ethereum white paper and it was saying things like smart contracts, and gas, and
whatever else that was on that Ethereum white paper, basically painting the architecture of like how complex the ecosystem is to fulfill its tasks, right?
Yeah.
Which in Ethereum's case, it was like we are a blockchain in the sense that, you could send transactions to one another just like you can on Bitcoin, but we've implemented this new layer to it that enables you to program different functions instead of just like a transfer function. Right now, you could do like a whatever.
Yeah, function. Some other function. A developed function by a developer.
And you do this by leveraging like a specific syntax or rule system or developer language like Solidity, right? To actually implement these functions in a readable format to where everybody else can operate under the same standard.
Right.
And therefore we have an ecosystem.
Right.
10 years later, boom. Yeah. We're killing it, guys.
DeFi, NFTs. GameFi, yeah.
Metaverse.
Right.
Everything we've come to love about this Web3 space largely came from that. Like something eerily similar to what we're about to kind of run down through with Boss.
Yeah.
An idea. Vitalik and like a few core, developers back in those days, they had a big idea and they had a big mission, right? But they had to convince people like that this mission was relevant.
Yeah,
right?
And you need human liquidity in order to build out this mission.
Agreed.
And so hence we have light papers and tweet storms and all this stuff, right?
Yep.
So Boss is basically the implementation of a Bitcoin virtual machine. And with a Bitcoin virtual machine, the idea is you can have developers come in and make applications that can be executed within the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Yeah.
But this is leveraging ordinals, right? And so then we're thinking is like, okay, how would we do it if we were doing a Bitcoin virtual machine? So what we would do is basically exactly what they're outlining in the light paper is you have smart inscriptions, basically code that is indexed by what they're calling a simplifier. And then it's indexed and it is pulled into this virtual machine so that developers can access that smart inscription and develop their own application with it. Right.
Well, I guess so I guess if we go to the light paper, we can kind of like outline step by step. There is a process flow here somewhere in this. And if we can go through each step of a typical transaction so we can kind of understand what's happening here, right?
So
because it is complex and there's many steps to this, but there's good reason for all of this, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it is about leveraging on-chain information that the individual users can contribute, which is through the act of inscribing things, which is like a registration process. And through that, this like middle layer or tertiary layer, whatever you want to call it, the BVM, the Boss protocol itself, has all the necessary like standard rule frameworks, I guess, that can read and interpret these inscriptions and then turn them into some function at the end of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Make it accessible to developers. That's what an indexer does, right?
Right.
So let's go through a typical transaction. So Bitcoin transactions are represented as unspent transaction outputs. If you guys don't know what a UTXO is, definitely look it up. But that is how Bitcoin works, and pass through the Bitcoin protocol. So they are then analyzed by the Ordinals protocol, which indexes them according to the Ordinal protocol standards. And then step number 2, the simplifiers, which I mentioned earlier in the Boss ecosystem, who have a Bitcoin node installed in their mainframe, retrieve and interpret the data using the OP standard and the ODE protocol registry. Ordinal transactions that follow the OP scheme standard can be exploited by the metastate and are considered to be smart inscriptions. So all that to say is that these smart inscriptions, basically developers writing a piece of code, submitting it as an inscription called a smart inscription, and this Boss ecosystem takes that, indexes it, and it becomes accessible via a Bitcoin virtual machine.
Right, and this is where it's interesting. Like,
did you know that we're more than just a YouTube channel? We also built MetaZone, the first app store for the metaverse. Buy, sell, and explore a new class of digital assets like our flagship game Rovi.ai. Support us by collecting your digital assets through MetaZone at metazone.io. Like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated. All right, back to the video.
Like, it's a network, right? And the individual actors or nodes within that network, that this is the task you are fulfilling, right? As a simplifier, you're basically parsing, I guess, all the inscriptions coming in. That's the purpose of having a Bitcoin node installed, right? So that you can have access to this information, what's actually being, appended to the Bitcoin blockchain every 10 minutes, right? In all these blocks. So you're going to have access to that information. So with this Boss BVM software, essentially, like, your job is to parse through all that information and basically match which of these inscriptions are following the right scheme that is aligned with the OP scheme and the, what's it called? The ODE protocol registry system.
So there's definitions down here. It's ODE protocol is the Operations Decentralized Entity Protocol.
There you go.
A permissionless protocol governance standard that enables decentralized and transparent governance of operational protocols. So it plays a key role in the governance and operations protocol within BOSS. So this is their mechanism for a potential governance functionality. Yeah,
so basically you got to match. So in order for like any change or alteration to happen, so what's actually happening? Like, okay, some inscription with some sort of instructions has been, is now part of Bitcoin's block data, right? So what happened? And then now these simplifiers, whatever, the people, the component within this this network that is parsing through all these inscriptions and then, ingesting that information.
Yeah.
What is the final result as far as like altering the state of the meta state, right?
Well, after pulling in that data, so basically retrieving and interpreting that data using the OP standards and the ODE protocol registry, I feel like that smart inscription is now accessible by a BVM developer, a BVM user, a developer using a BVM to access that function. And so you could call that and create your smart application using whatever's been inscribed onto Bitcoin's blockchain. So why would anybody do that?
Yeah.
So once you submit a smart inscription, anybody can use that, right? It's there on Bitcoin's blockchain. It's basically open source. And so any developer can leverage that piece of code using the BVM.
Yeah.
And at least that functionality is now accessible by everybody. It's in the same way as like GitHub. When GitHub is an open repository, people can look at your code and start forking it or edit it, submit a pull request.
Yes.
And it's basically what's happening on Bitcoin. It's like people are developing on using these inscriptions. BVM is pulling in, indexing that data, and the developers build code based on what is inscribed on Bitcoin's blockchain.
Right. So they're individually creating like their own like protocols essentially that have these dynamic registries.
Yeah.
And that they're not like, fixed in they're not in a fixed state in the way like a smart contract is, right?
Yeah.
Once you deploy a smart contract, there's largely, if you want to implement some new functionality, you have to roll out a new smart contract,
correct.
Right? And that's the difference. That's what they mean by this introduces much more flexibility as a developer, right? You're rolling out these protocols, not smart contracts that are dynamic.
Yeah.
They can be changed based on the inscription information that they're taking in, right? So it is interesting. It's a whole different like approach. And I'm thinking like this is probably the only way it can be done as far as like, because Bitcoin wasn't developed, with smart contracts in place the way Ethereum was, right? So
correct. But I asked you a question earlier before we got on, and it's like, why is BOSS important? Like, why do we need developers to be able to develop dApps on top of Bitcoin? And then your response, if you remember, it was like, well, do you think we're only going to be inscribing pictures and text and
meme coins?
That's it? Like, that's the ultimate, form?
It can be. If it is, and that's one of the first things we said, like whenever we got into the BRC20 space and Ordinals, like, this is cool for now, but if it just stays like this, and this is for sure going to be a passing fad, and like we're just going to look back on it 5 years from now, I was like, well, that was a good shot.
Yeah.
But we're all still going to be on Ethereum, actually building real DeFi apps and, building very functional NFTs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Leveraging the Ethereum virtual machine to its fullest potential.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what we've been doing for the last 4 years as developers, right?
Yeah.
And everybody else. But so this is Bitcoin's attempt to kind of like, create a
competitor to Ethereum.
Yeah. A different mechanism, right? And in some cases, an even better version potentially. So we don't know necessarily what are the downside inefficiencies, if any, until we start to see some developers come in actually leveraging and building using this standard, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, but you're right. Ultimately, it's like we can't just be inscribing text forever, right? And what's interesting is that BOSS is built on top of Ordinals.
Correct.
And so it's leveraging the existing protocol of Ordinals and then building a virtual machine on top of it.
And it makes sense why this even exists, and we understand because we are developers ourselves, and we understand the developer like life.
Yeah.
Right. This comes from the OSHI team, right?
Yeah.
And OSHI, if you remember, we made a video about that project a long time ago when we first discovered BRC20s. They wanted to be the first ones to introduce, a decentralized token swapping mechanism to Ordinals, BRC20s, through using liquidity pools and stuff like that. So I'm assuming through developing this protocol, they ran into a wide variety of problems and dilemmas that most other project founders are not thinking about because they're not trying to build complexities like that.
Yeah, we've been there.
We've been there, done that. So and then what is the natural response to that? Either you sit around and wait for somebody else to build something like this, some sort of infrastructure, in order for you to do what it is you want to do, as an app developer.
Right.
Or you refocus your initiatives on building infrastructure yourself instead of waiting around.
It makes sense.
That's exactly where we're at, right?
Yeah, it makes sense.
And the metaverse side. Yeah.
That's why it's important to pay attention as to what exactly is happening and who's building and what, and understanding the problems, because anyone who's addressing those problems, like, for example, bosses, like, they have a lot of potential to actually move the market forward.
Yeah, I think, understanding the history of, I guess, this team, Merlin and Grug were the first initial two developers, as far as we know. We don't know. We really want to get some people either within the team or the community on our podcast so we can have a much more in-depth discussion about what's actually happening behind the scenes. But as far as what we've seen, this progression of initiatives makes sense. This is proof that there's actual developers behind this project, and they're not just a marketing team trying to fluff us all up, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, so hopefully we can have on Satoshi OB Archimedes on the podcast, because I think he's deep into this boss ecosystem, and I think he's one of the community members. I don't know if he's a developer there, but
and anybody who wants to, because all we did was nice wiener up there, by the way, in his Twitter banner. This is what conviction looks like. Okay. Right on, dude. Archimedes, dude. Spitting the alpha.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, we want to get deeper into this because the problem that's being addressed is probably one of the bigger. It can't get any bigger than this.
I don't think so.
It's Vitalik identified a problem with Bitcoin. His solution was let's create Ethereum.
Yeah.
But now, in context of Ordinals exists, all right, now how do we bring complex functionality to the Ordinals ecosystem?
Yeah.
It's on the same scale of dilemma as why Ethereum needs to exist in the first place.
Right.
We have the same problem now. Yeah. We've built an ecosystem on Bitcoin, and it's already crossed over the $1 billion threshold.
Yeah.
So now, how do we get to the next phase? Or what are we gonna do? Spin up another Ethereum, another layer 1? No, you can't do that.
Right.
So this is a big one, dude. What are you looking up here?
Okay, so check this out. So Bitcoin's Taproot upgrade. So I remember reading this a while back, and I was like, okay, finally. It says the implementation of Taproot is also a win for smart contracts on Bitcoin's blockchain. It could open the door for more innovative financial applications on Bitcoin's network. According to some, the Taproot upgrade also means that Bitcoin could become a player in DeFi. Although the cryptocurrency's blockchain has always processed smart contract capabilities.
Possess smart contract.
It has been utilized to its full potential due to the problems associated with the scaling transaction. The Taproot invitation solves that problem. So now we're getting into a much more complex functionalities on top of Bitcoin.
Yes.
And I don't know if smart contracts are capable due to Taproot or Ordinals, but it seems like Boss is saying it's because of Ordinals rather than whatever functionalities here in the Taproot upgrade that I don't think anyone has tapped into yet.
Right. Well, as far as the overall ethos behind why this is important, why this is a big deal, why we should all be paying attention, this is definitely not this is all in. Nothing ever is. Yeah. Right. It's just if you understand the dilemma, and you don't have to be a developer to do that. If you're a user of these different ecosystems, what is it that you can actually do right now with your BRC20 tokens?
Nothing.
All right. And if you spend any time in Ethereum or Solana or any of these other, layer 1 ecosystems, usually there's something to do with these assets. Right.
Yeah.
That's because there's an execution environment. There's programmability in these ecosystems, right? That's largely what's lacking to Bitcoin. So that's a big problem. So we gotta address that. We gotta fix that. As far as we know, this is the only
attempt
on Bitcoin. We got Stacks, of course. So that's a layer 2 ecosystem, right? So there's gonna be competitors emerging to this, but as of right now, this seems like the most. This is the best shot we got, right?
Yeah.
So it's worthy of exploration.
Definitely.
Right? Yes.
Definitely. So yeah, I think that's it. So Boss is definitely going to be deep. Hopefully we get Archimedes on board and talk to us about, anything that we misunderstood, anything that is missing the potential of something like this.
Yes.
And let's see what happens, because like you're right, it's, without Boss, you're not going to have the complexity necessary to onboard, the masses onto Bitcoin, other than just like, sending Bitcoin to each other.
Correct. Yeah, we've done a lot already by galvanizing a community interested in the metaverse, right? That's what Bitmaps has done.
Yeah.
And developers are building for that, but we're going to run into that choke point as well as metaverse developers. We're not going to be able to build any semblance of a digital economy without like the complex functionalities. Like the user activity means nothing is in context of like.
Yeah, imagine you have your metaverse on top of Bitcoin, but you can't really do anything that's decentralized.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
You need to be able to access dApps in order to, like, maybe there's going to be a market where people only want to access dApps. They want a decentralized metaverse. They want everything completely on chain.
Yeah.
Like you can't have complex functionalities without potentially Boss.
Exactly. So this is a big one. This is a big one to pay attention to. As of right now, they have some really good ideas. This is going to be another, like, we're going to wait and see. Kind of like when we first discovered Ordinals, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, Ordinals exists, but now let's wait around and see who actually comes to leverage it. Who's going to come and scribe and innovate. Right?
Yeah.
So we're going to have to call this another potential Ordinals 2.0. Like, let's see what happens here. Wait around and see if the devs show up.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested. All right, guys, if there's any questions, let us know in the comment section below. Make sure you follow us on all our Twitter channels. And until then, we'll catch you in the next video.
Peace.